Okay. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Read to Inspire podcast. I am Sibongiseni Mkolozeli, the host. In this podcast, we have a mission to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond, because we believe that reading is the absolute best foundation ever from all material success. So if you want to be successful in any endeavor in your life, you better use reading as your basic foundation. Again, today I'm not alone. I have a guest, a beautiful Tsepi, also known as Mmatshepo in full. Her name is Seoka. She is an activist and author, of course, mental health activist, public speaker, and transformation coach. And among other things that I love about her, she is an active marathon runner. And this year alone, I don't know, maybe more than 10 marathons she has participated in already, including, guess what? The Comrade Marathon. We'll talk about that briefly, but let me welcome my guest for now. Tsepi, thank you for joining me in this episode and welcome to the Read to Inspire podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mmatshepo Seoka. I never take such opportunities for granted. You know, these are answered prayers. So I am truly so grateful to Visionary Readers Book Club for having me on this podcast, you know, just so I can share a little bit and maybe just drop some few nuggets here and there.
Yes.
But thank you so much for having me.
Okay, let's get to know you a bit before we dive into your book, Your Transformation Summons. Maybe the icebreaker question, yes, I'm glad you also have your copy over there. As an icebreaker question, let me start by asking you to take us through your life journey. Where were you born, your upbringing, and where are you based currently?
Okay, so I'm a Pretoria girl. I'm currently praying for a move outside my environment. You know how they say you need to get out of your hometown to grow.
Yeah.
So that's just where I'm at. But I'm a Pretoria girl by heart. I was born in Mamelodi. I was born to a single mother. You know, so it was my mom and I for most of my childhood. My dad was never part of my life. Initially he rejected my mom, but she rejected me when she was pregnant. So I kind of grew up knowing that, and I think that really changed, or that kind of carved the trajectory of my life up until this point. It's definitely shaped me into the woman that I've become and I'm becoming, and ultimately my purpose, you know, having faced that rejection, that abandonment, and all the childhood trauma. Those are things that I've had to kind of work through now in my adulthood, and that I get to kind of help little Mmatshepos, you know, little 13, 14-year-old Mmatshepos and adults who still have little 13, 14-year-old Mmatshepos within them. So yeah, but other than that, I really had, before I met my dad when I was 11. Up until then, I had a really good childhood. And my mom has always, up until now, really created such a safe space, a shell. My mom is truly my anchor. I will forever just, you know, be so grateful to her. But I had a fairly normal childhood apart from, you know, all the rejection issues. I started suffering from mental health challenges as a result of the abandonment, the rejection when I was around 16, 17. So that's when I can definitely say that the bulk of my story has been since then. But otherwise, Mmatshepo was really just she grew up a very bubbly child, very outspoken. And
Yes, that I can agree so much. From the few years that I've known you, I've always described you to people that I know as a talkative and bubbly personality. So thank you for sharing briefly about your life journey. So before we dive into the book deeply, as you know, we have maybe this podcast, as you know, is basically under the auspices of the book club, Visionary Readers Book Club that you've spoken briefly about. So as you know, also, in this podcast, we're all about reading. We love books to promote the reading culture, as I've mentioned, as part of our mission. What I want to ask now regarding reading, I want to know from you, when did you start reading books? We can say self-help or personal development books outside the scope of academia. And why do you think reading is important?
Oh wow, that is such an amazing question. You couldn't have asked it to a better person. So I started writing my book in 2021.
Mm,
And mind you, I started writing the book in November and I had started going through my transformation journey in August. The title of my book is Your Transformation Summons.
yeah.
So I started going through my transformation in August, and I started writing the book in November. Now, what's crazy is that before August, like I never really read outside of academia, like you said. Like I was one of those people who were like, oh no, reading is not for me. Reading has its own people. And you find people who we're okay with, saying that, like, no, reading has its groups of people. We kind of like see it as a hobby that people can kind of choose from. And it's so crazy to think that that was my pattern and my thought of thinking. Because I mean, for one thing, I've always known that I've been my purpose is to be a woman of impact, a
Mm,
woman who is meant to change lives, a woman who's meant to help people, a woman who's meant to speak. I mean, yes, for the most part, I didn't really know exactly how it was going to look like, but I knew that impact was definitely something I was born to do. And it's so crazy to think that, like, because I didn't read, where would I have gotten all of that knowledge from? What would I have referenced to? And I actually write about it in the book, like, what would I have referenced to, like, if I never bothered to read? If I was placed on a platform, what would I say? What would I be quoting from? Where would I be getting this knowledge? If I just felt like, no, man, reading is just not for me. It has its own people. And around that time in August, when I started reading the 5 a.m. book club, and I kind of taught myself the principle of, I think sometimes what overwhelms people is thinking, oh my gosh, look at how big that book is. I need to get through it like now. And
mm.
I taught myself to just get it, like take it a piece at a time, and I'll go 5 pages. I mean, this was coming from someone who didn't really read outside of academia. So I would say, okay, the target is just 5 pages. And then after a month, okay, the target is 10 pages, and I just started getting myself into the habit of reading. And wow, like my life has changed for the absolute better. Like when I speak radical change in the book, like I'm speaking to one of the aspects that I experienced when I started being intentional about reading. I think reading opens up your mind so much to the world that is out there. Like you really stop thinking beyond like your four walls or just your
Mm,
immediate circumstances. You're able to kind of dream big and envision, what's out there, whether it's a self-help book or a non or a fictional book or whatever the case may be. There's just always something in books that opens up your mind. Like I know for me, since I've been reading, I've always wanted to travel, but I feel like since I started reading, the desire to travel has grown even more because I want to expose myself to what I'm reading in the books. And I think I don't know, this was a quote or someone said this, that every single answer you will ever want or need is found in a book somewhere. That's just
yes.
the
That,
power of reading. So I'll definitely say my journey with reading started when I just shortly before writing the book. And I love that
mm,
my story is a bit different to your average reader who say, no, I grew up reading books and that was my thing. And
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think my story also shows that it's never too late. It's
True.
never too late. You can start when you're 10 or when you're 50. The important thing is to start. And whenever you start, whatever you need, you will find in a book at that particular moment or season. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I share the same story in terms of how late in life did you start reading. It seemed
Yeah.
like for you, it was just before 2021 when you started embarking on your journey of writing your book.
The book, yes.
So for me, I remember very well it was around 2014. So I started late, unlike those other people you're talking about who started very early, even some as, toddlers I've had. So basically,
Yeah.
yeah, reading is very important. I'm glad you also mentioned the benefits of reading, but there's so much more than that, than those that you have just mentioned. So thank you for sharing all those. Now, my next question, since you also spoke about your writing journey, I want to know about your book. Like, what inspired you, or who inspired you to write this book?
Oh my goodness. So I think okay, so in August, it was actually 2020, sorry, when I
Mm,
started writing the book, not 2021. But in August of that year, I experienced a life-altering moment. And so as a result of the trauma that I'd faced as a child and the void that I had from this rejection, it would really get me into very unhealthy, toxic, dysfunctional patterns, the
mm,
dysfunction of unforgiveness and bitterness towards my dad, the dysfunction of getting into these relationships as a broken person, and being with people who can actually identify that brokenness, and just a cycle that never ever ever ends. So in August of that year, I found myself in a relationship where I just said, you know what, I've had it, I've had enough. Like, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I knew that I needed to transform. I knew that
mm,
it was time for radical change. God summoned my transformation, and that's hence the title of the book, Your Transformation Summons. Like, God summoned my transformation. So I knew that I could be better. I had to be better. And so I started on my journey of transforming, entirely holistically. And with me, when I speak transformation, I don't just speak of it like in one or two, like, sections. I speak of it holistically, transforming physically, your exercise, your eating, your health, transforming spiritually, having a strong relationship with the Father if you're Christian, transforming mentally, transforming emotionally, psychologically, going for therapy. Like, I'm so big on holistic transformation. And so I started going on that journey for myself.
mm,
And as I was on this journey, this was August, October, November. So I've been watching it. By this point now, I've started reading, I'm watching podcasts, and then I came across a sermon by Dr. Miles Monroe, and
mm.
that sermon was how to write and publish your own book. And so I thought,
Oh,
so but in that two parts, so it's a two videos actually, about they both accumulate 2 hours. And
mm,
the first video, he was giving reasons why everyone should write a book, and for me, mind you, it was very scary at the time. The thought of writing a book, I mean, let alone I had just started reading books. So the thought of writing a book was like out of my imagination. But he said something, like, he said a lot of important things, but I think he said something so crucial. He said, when you write a book, it's like you're leaving a part of you on this earth, that
mm.
even long after you're no longer here, you will still essentially be here. In a way, we
Yeah.
kind of describing legacy, but yeah, you're leaving you here for generations to come long after you. It was so amazing to learn that he had actually written 67 books, and then 57 of which were published, and the others were manuals and
Mm,
stuff. And I thought that is so amazing. Like, imagine the 67 of him that he's kind of, left behind. So I guess, that's where, and the Holy Spirit kind of prompted me that your story has matured enough to the point where it's now time to
mm.
write the book. And even though I had this fear, and I thought, how could someone like me write a book? Because it seemed like such a crazy idea. But I somehow had the peace to know that I could do it, that I
Yeah.
was capable. So yeah, that's what inspired me to write the book, my own
Mm.
transformation journey. So I speak about the transformation I speak about in the book is what I have also kind of gone through myself.
Yeah, I love what you said about your book being your legacy. Someone else said when basically your book makes you immortal, even when you are long gone, people will still
Yeah,
read your work
yeah.
and hear your thought patterns and things that you love, or maybe what things that made you tick while you're still on this earth. So I love that. Your book is your legacy, and your book is basically what makes you stay alive forever.
Yeah.
That's what they say by being immortal. So thank you for that, Sepi. Now, I want us to start with chapter 1. I'm glad you went at length. I love how you go into details. I asked you like a short
Yeah.
question, but your answer is like loaded. I love that.
That's
So you
me.
gave a full background that will give like a perspective or context to my next question. I want us to talk about your chapter 1, which is the power of forgiveness. You call it the activator. I'm curious to find out, why do you call it the activator, forgiveness?
Sure. So remember I spoke about these patterns of dysfunction that we constantly, find ourselves in. And I knew that in order for me to, transform and be this person that I knew I could be, this person that did better, I knew that I needed to do the self work. I needed to do the internal work. And within that journey of transformation, I realized that I was operating in a lot of dysfunction. And like I mentioned, part of that dysfunction was the unforgiveness that I had for my father.
Mm,
So, obviously in the book I speak about, or the entire book is about the journey of transformation and how to
mm,
kind of like achieve this radical change. And again, I said I needed to really go back, um, backtrack, open up the things that I had kind of, closed and felt like I wouldn't go back to. So I had to, get rid of the dysfunction. The unforgiveness is the dysfunction that I was
mm,
operating in. It's the dysfunction that led me to constantly be in these unhealthy cycles and patterns. So I needed to go back. Needed to ask myself, why does Mmatshepo behave the way she behaves? Why does Mmatshepo make the choices that she makes? Why does Mmatshepo end up in these unhealthy, toxic relationships? Why does
mm,
Mmatshepo not do better? So and then the answer I got was the root, which is the unforgiveness that I had towards my father and constantly trying to fill up this void. And I thought all these other things would fill that void. Um, so the active or forgiveness, the activator for me, that was where my dysfunction came from. And that's what I
mm,
needed to start to work on in order for me to progress on this journey of transformation. I needed to start from there, like as the activator, or to activate my transformation, I needed to
mm.
go back and dig up those or that answer to those questions. And the answer I got was the dysfunction, which came from the unforgiveness I had towards my father.
Oh, beautiful. And then now from what you just shared, I believe the activator, I think it's safe to say forgiveness as an activator, it basically activate the positive aspect in your life so that you are happy, you are healthier, you think clearly, even your mental
Yeah.
health comes into a better state.
Yeah, and remember, my activator could be this forgiveness. For someone else, it can
Mm,
be something completely different. Remember, I'm telling my story. So
yeah.
the whole message behind it is find what the activator towards your transformation is going to be. Because I think sometimes when people think transformation, they think of it in a very outwardly perspective. They think of it just very like, okay, physical. I need to just go to the gym. I need to start putting on these type of clothes. I need to start walking like this person. But people rarely go inside. People rarely like start to do the internal work. People are afraid to open up those wounds so that they can
Mm,
deal with them and actually bandage them better. So for me, it was the unforgiveness. For someone else, it might be something completely different. But what I'm saying with this chapter is find what your activator is. Find what the thing that's going to really help you to walk the journey towards your transformation is going to be. So I'm saying don't just make it an outside external thing. Make it really internal so that your transformation, your radical change can be long lasting.
I get you. So beautiful. And you know what? My next question is relating to like the things you went through, especially in your upbringing. And some of the things, of course, you detail them in the book in a very concise and understandable way. I was curious when you mentioned that at the age of 20, you ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And just that on its own is like it can make everyone curious. So do you mind
Yeah.
sharing, maybe since it's also not in the book, how did that happen, or how did you end up in the psychiatric hospital at the age of 20?
Oh, wow. When we say it now, it's like, it was just a psych hospital. But back then, I think which
Yeah.
year was it? Back then, it was like trying to figure out what year it was without revealing my age. But anyway, I think it was 2016, if not 17.
Okay.
But back then, like mental health was not as widely spoken about as it is today. Like I think COVID in a way has really led people to become very intentional about their mental health. Because I think COVID really did a lot to us psychologically. To almost everyone experienced some sort of psychological effect as a result of the pandemic. So that has led to mental health awareness really being on the rise, to conversations about mental health. But back
Mm.
then it was a completely different ball game. And so yeah, at the age of 20, I found myself in a psychiatric hospital, which so back then, when you never wanted people to know that you've got depression, because usually if you say you've got depression, it'd be, oh, she's attention seeking, or people start to act differently around you. People, there was that C word that I don't even want to mention. If you speak psychiatric hospital, there's that C word that everybody just associates it with.
Yeah.
So even for me, yeah, even for me, it was so hard to come to terms with it. Like I didn't want anyone to know. It was just my mom and my immediate family. Like I think even
Mm.
most of my family members, they didn't know. My friends, no one knew. It was that bad. But I got to that stage. So like I mentioned, I started struggling with my mental health. I developed depression, and I would have these. So initially they said it was panic disorder. And I'd
Mm.
have these severe panic attacks. And I would convulse. So convulsing is when your body shakes very rapidly. Like
Mm.
you're having some sort of electric shock. And then your eyes might also just roll up a bit. So it looked like I was having an epileptic seizure.
Mm.
Excuse me. So around that time, yeah. So initially, like when I was in UCT, so I was in UCT in 2015 and UP in 20. So UCT 2015, then I left because of the illness. Then 2016, I was in UP. So I was like continuously have these attacks. And then the psychiatrist who was seeing me at the time was like, okay, Mmatshepo, we need to just do more tests because it just seems a bit more the symptoms, we can't just say it's panic disorder. So they did more tests and they found that it was it was temporal lobe epilepsy, which is kind of
Mm.
like partial seizures. So what
Mm.
led me to that is these attacks. I'd have these attacks, and one day I had like one really bad attack when I was at the psychiatrist rooms at the hospital, and he was like, "No, we immediately signing you off to Vista." So he would also always see me after the attacks, and then now he saw me like when I was having the attack. So he thought the first thing was to send me there. So
Mm.
yeah, it was very difficult. And I honestly believe that had I not also stigmatized myself, maybe
Mm.
I would have healed sooner. Maybe I would have accepted that, hey, this is what's going on with me. This is my story. It's not, it doesn't even define me as a person. It's just a part of my
Mm.
story. Let me learn how to deal with it. Unfortunately, I only got to that point when I was just already a bit far gone, just in terms of the delays and everything that I experienced. But yeah, at 20 years old, I was at a psychiatric hospital, and right now it seems okay to say, but back then it was like, woo.
I can
But yeah.
imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. And then 3 years back, like at the age of 17, you share a very interesting story in your book. It's like you were weighing, at age 17, you were weighing 107 kilograms, but a year
Yay!
later, you lost 43 kilograms. I mean, I was like, this is mind blowing. How did you do it?
Oh my goodness. So I'm one person that if I put my mind to something, listen, I am. And that's why I'm the type of person that I always review things that I commit to, because I believe
Mm.
that when you commit, it's so important that you see things that you commit to through. I think one of the worst forms of betrayal is betraying yourself by not committing or seeing through the things that you commit to. So
Mm.
I tried, obviously, as a young child, because I grew up quite on the chubby side. I tried with my mom, always go back these diets back and forth. But I remember it was in 2014. It was in 2014. I was 17. Yeah. Was I 17 in 2014? Somewhere
Now we
there.
know your age.
Now my age is just out there.
Yeah.
I remember, and I was in matric. So I said, listen, next year I'm going to varsity and I'm going to be snatched. I'm going to be the girl of my dreams. So I started this journey again. I allowed myself that restart, and yeah, I started working out, and then I joined the gym in August because I started the journey around April. And what I
Mm.
did when I started was just to train my mind how to eat small, because I struggled with portion sizes. Like I'd really eat a lot of whatever I was having. So for
Mhm.
the first 21 days, because it takes 21 days to build a habit, and at 17, I knew that, okay, I need to learn how to, take these 21 days to build this new habit. And so I
Mm.
taught myself how to eat smaller meals, smaller portions, and then I started to cut out certain things, cut down. I believe in the principle of cutting down while working to cut out. Because sometimes when you go like ham, the withdrawal might be too much and then you just relapse. So I started
Oh,
teaching myself those principles. Yeah. And then I would exercise in the bathroom. In August, I joined the gym. And yeah, I just, that was my life. And when I went to varsity, so I remember in orientation week at UCT, they had this, obviously they have certain meals that they gave us. So I was so intentional about making sure that I would not be one of those people who experience freshers brain. So that meant I was even more intentional when I got to varsity with what I ate, just going to the gym after class. So my life was literally it was class, it was my room, it was the gym. Like that was me. So yeah, that's how I managed to lose about 53 kilograms in that year, by just really
yeah.
being really super, super, super intentional. And yeah, the thing about 80% being diet is like 100%. So, or
Uh,
nutrition rather,
yeah.
100%. So
So the formula is 80% nutrition and 20% exercise. That is the health
yes,
formula, right? Or fitness formula.
yes. You can't
Beautiful.
you can't cheat a bad, like you can't outwork a bad diet. You can't cheat. You can't
Mm,
cheat with a bad diet. You just can't. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. All right. I love the fact that, your journey, in fact, you call yourself a transformation coach, and your transformation approach, you use a very, I must say, a holistic approach, because it's not only about mental health, it's everything you can think about if you want
Yeah.
to improve your life. So I truly appreciate that. And as you're explaining, people will understand what you really mean about that.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, Tsepi, you also have a YouTube channel, which I want you to talk about briefly. Obviously, if someone reads the book, they can get to understand that it's about travel, it's about fitness, it's about a healthy lifestyle, and so forth. You mentioned something in the book in relation to the YouTube channel that um, you basically revealed a naked truth about yourself, which was not the initial intention for creating or starting the YouTube channel. I was curious to
Yeah.
find out what naked truth about yourself that you revealed in the channel, which you basically were not intending to do initially.
So I think, okay, this is the channel. The first question, because I think you asked two questions. I pay
Okay.
attention. So you asked about the YouTube channel. I haven't recorded content in some time. So I had an accident on the 8th of November 2021. I
Mm.
was running that morning. It was 5:30 in the morning, and I was doing my morning run.
Wow.
And I happened to be hit by a car. Unfortunately, I suffered temporary amnesia due to the
Mm.
concussion that I suffered. So I can't really remember. The only thing I remember is waking up that morning and then waking up later at the hospital. But the driver who hit me, he says that there were some men who were attacking me, and to get away from them, I ran onto the road. Of course, I can't verify or deny his story, because my mind or my brain just blocked out that memory, maybe
Mm.
just because of the trauma, to protect me from the trauma. So yeah, so I think since then, like I have struggled. I've really struggled. I've tried to record content, but yeah, I've struggled to get back to where I was. Hopefully, as I'm feeling it come back, but I'm just
Yeah.
giving myself a whole lot more time, because before then, like, I was on, like, yeah, making sure with the content, and then the accident happened, and I think it just threw me off a bit. But I do miss YouTube, and hopefully I'll be getting back. Um, and yeah, this naked truth, right? So I think initially, when we start YouTube channels, we want to show the good part about, life, the travels, the beauty, the this, the that. But when I started walking in my purpose, walking in what God has called me to walk into, being the woman that God has called me, I realized that really my journey is not even just for me. I didn't go through everything I went through just to keep it to myself. I would get worried, when God would instruct me to start talking, opening up about the things I've gone through, with this void that I constantly felt the need to fill, these toxic relationships that I would find myself in, my daddy issues. It was not easy when God would instruct me to start speaking about that. And I remember being worried that, sure, God, what are people going to say about me? My husband, my future husband is going to see that and be like, oh, no. And God was like, people will be drawn to you because of
Yeah.
that. And he will love you, the future husband. He will love you because of that. And I guess it just gave me a lot of peace to know that really my story is just not for me. I didn't go through everything I went through to keep it to myself. Like, I went through all of that so that I could really help so many other young people out there, people just in general. And I'm so grateful for the amount of people who've come back to me and said, "Oh, Mmatshepo, thank you so much," because I needed to hear that I was not alone who had felt that way because of that rejection. And I needed to hear someone be brave enough to stand and say, this is what I went through. This is my naked truth. I mean, it might, how the enemy uses things that we've gone through to shame us. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
coming out and I'm saying, no, I'm not going to be ashamed. What the enemy meant for evil, God has turned around for good. So yeah, that's my naked truth. Really, the experiences that I've gone through, the times that I've made mistakes where I didn't do better, whether I knew better or I didn't know better, but it was me coming out and saying, yo, this is my journey. This is what the rejection and the childhood trauma has how it has manifested in my life, but also this is the grace of God. This is how God's grace has come and covered all of that, and how his love has covered a multitude of sins. So yeah, that's the YouTube channel and the naked truth.
Oh, beautiful. The grace of God is sufficient for all of us. I love that you are a woman of faith. In the book, speaking about faith, you write the book based on the story of faith. I'm curious to find out, is this lady, Faith, you? Is that your journey in life? Because you are not specific, you write like in a third person. So I want you to clarify that part.
That's a spoiler. That's a spoiler. People must buy the book to know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is a very beautiful way to keep intrigue. Like most skilled writers, they find a way of sparking curiosity to their readers. So, okay, I'm glad you said that. They must buy the book and find that out for themselves.
Yeah.
And speaking about, the grace of God and all these things, I love the fact that your book is decorated with beautiful Bible verses. Almost every 5 page, definitely you'll see a verse that is so inspiring that relates, of course, to the content or to the subject of that particular chapter you're talking about. And speaking about all of those things you mentioned, the things that we're basically talking about in the YouTube channel that people shy away from. And now I think another thing that you have mentioned as part of like the naked truth about about yourself, in addition or related to that, you also say you speak about things people in society shy away from. So I'm just trying to be sure, are these things also the things that, are the naked truth about yourself? Or now, because it seems like this is not only about you now, there's, let's say, discussion or topics that people shy away from. What can you maybe specify, like giving examples about what are those things specifically?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. And I think maybe the beauty about my story is that it's very multifaceted. It's not
Mm,
just there's so many different elements of the things that I've gone through that I think a lot of people can relate to. I
mm,
usually say God through my story, God has helped me to find my crowd. He has helped me to find the people that I'm really meant to, or who may relate to my story that I'll be able to help. Like I said, the young girl and boy who has been rejected by their father, the adult who still has that young child that needs healing. Women who've been in abusive and toxic relationships, women who've been raped, women who have gone through abuse in whatever
mm.
form. So I love that through each and every single avenue of my story and the things that I've gone through, God has really used those different parts and elements to help me find my crowd.
Oh, okay, cool. So, okay, I'm glad you explained that part. I think now we can move on because my next question is related to the work that you are doing through your foundation. I just want to find out also, like for people who might not know, can you tell us more about it? Let's say, for instance, how was it founded? Like, what are the values, the mission, as well as the purpose of the foundation?
Oh wow, yay! TIR, my baby, my baby, my
Treasure
baby.
in a room, TIR.
A treasure run, yeah. So it was founded in 2018. And I just, I had this idea that, hey, I wanted to help because at that time, while I was still, it was before I went through my major transformation, but I knew, I was aware that I was going through all these different feelings, and sometimes just feeling like because my dad was never around and he never validated me and affirmed me, it really toyed a lot with my value, my self value, my self worth, how I saw myself, how I felt about myself. And I knew that I couldn't be the only person feeling like that. And I wanted to help the young girl. Initially, when we started, it was mostly for girls. But as I continued to, go on the journey, I found that the things that affect young girls affect boys too. I mean, you can't speak teenage pregnancy and not include boys, because who
Mm,
are the girls having sex with? So yeah, I felt that I wanted to really help instill, remind the young girl and boy that despite whatever challenges they have or circumstances that they come from, because we deal with children who are from really impoverished backgrounds,
mm,
underprivileged areas and communities, and we're trying to say to them, despite where you come from in the family setting, some of them are in child-headed households, they're leading their families, or they're the breadwinners, or whatever the situation may be, but we're saying that you have value, and we're really trying to remind them of their value. We're trying to show them that they are loved,
mm,
beyond whatever circumstance that they come from. And so, yeah, we've been doing, hygiene drive projects where we collect toiletries for both boys and girls. And obviously the difference with the packs is that the girls packs just has sanitary pads. And I've always believed in the importance and power of education. So I've
mm,
always felt that in addition to just giving people stuff, like you need to educate them and empower them so that tomorrow they can be the same people going back into their communities and saying, someone believed in me so much that they did this for me, and I want to
yes.
do this for them. So we believe,
Mm,
I really, really, I don't believe in just, because anyone can give anyone anything. But I believe that when you attach the resource of time, it really speaks to love as well,
mm,
because we know that out of everything we're giving these kids or doing for these kids, the most important thing is communicating the message of love, that we
mm,
really love them, that there are people out there who care about them so much that they're sacrificing their resources, their time, their money, their energy, just to be there for them and help them, see a better future for themselves. So yeah, we turned 5 years in September.
mm.
Yay!
Hey.
Um, and that really makes me so happy, because sometimes we find that we start initiatives and somewhere along the road, we just kind of like, but I'm so grateful because I have like the team that I have, or and the secretary general, yes, Ifilwe, she's really been such an anchor. I say she's the heartbeat of the organization. You know, she's been there from the start, and together we've just really been, you know, as people come and go, but we've really just been holding it down. And I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful for the team that I have. 6 of us ladies. We would need more guys, but so grateful with the hands that we have. I mean, this year we've had to kind of say to ourselves, okay, because we had a project that we were running last year where once every month we would see kids and give them these packs and have a session with them. But then we realized that we don't have enough hands this year. So we said, okay, let's do less events, have more and have more impact on those events, and hopefully we'll get to attract more people who may come or who may want to offer their hands with the initiative or with the organization. So yeah, it's been going very well, and I'm really super grateful.
I'm
Yes.
glad. I'm glad it's been going very well. I mean, 5 years already. I mean, Tsepi, the work that you are doing in the organization, you and your team, is commendable. And I believe there's a hand of God in it. It's inspiring just to listen to you and explaining the purpose behind the organization. I'm so happy. I'm so glad that things are going well. And I speak blessings upon you and your team. May God continue to bless you, to provide with all your needs. And with the relation also, I remember I promised you like a couple of books, but it's just that I was away. So whenever you're ready, I've got those books that you need to give away as part of the charity work you are
I'm
doing with your
ready.
foundation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of God's favor or God's grace or God's hand, in your book, you speak about God's purpose and God's calling, which I also believe, you know, it's something that most people are still not clear when they have found their calling or found their purpose in life. I want us maybe briefly, can you maybe differentiate what is God's calling and God's purpose? I'm also not clear about that, but I think I have a glimpse of what those things are. But you, considering the fact that you are a very spiritual human being, so I think you can educate us on the differences between those two concepts.
That's a bit of a tricky one. The difference between God's calling and God's purpose, right?
Yes.
Okay, sure. That's a bit of a for me, I would say that's one and the same.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. I think that's what I thought. But you know, people they use these terms interchangeably. But you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you ask why, sometimes they say God's calling, and sometimes they say God's calling. But okay, with all of that, let's just assume for the purpose of this podcast, they are just one and the same thing.
One
How
and the
do you
same thing.
know? How do you know when you have found your calling or your purpose?
Oh, wow. When
Mm,
you wake up every day and you're excited to when you change from having a have to mentality to a get to mentality. So you wake up and you get to you know, despite I mean like with the nonprofit, you find that if we have a project, it's very stressful and we need to put this together, put that together. But I wake up, I never wake up with that, oh my gosh, have to I have to do that. I get to, you know, despite how stressful it is. So
mm,
for me, I think when I found my purpose, it was when I would wake up and be excited to get to, you know, carry out whatever I had to do for that time. So for me, I mean, like, I always say I started the nonprofit to help heal the kids and heal other people. But the most beautiful thing has been how the nonprofit has healed me, has helped me.
wow.
I found myself in seasons where things were so tough and my mental health was not even in the greatest place. But knowing that there are these kids that are depending on me, you know, for guidance, for wisdom, for
Mm,
help, it would keep me going. You know, I would wake up knowing that sure, I have a purpose that is bigger than myself. And I always say, for me, I liken having a purpose to also knowing your why, which I
mm,
always say those are things that need to be bigger than you. Your purpose will never be just about you. And that's how I think our Creator, our Father works. Essentially, as children of God, ultimately, as we all have our different purposes and mandates and things that we're meant to do, the common denominator is that it is for kingdom building. It is to
Wow.
win souls
Mm,
for the kingdom, whatever that looks like. And even in the word of God, God does say, whatever talent, or if you have the gift of speaking, of tongues, whatever it is, you bring it. Like, how they say every single part of the body is important.
mm,
I see it in that way. And the common denominator, like I said, is kingdom building, whatever your purpose is. And essentially, what I'm saying is that your purpose will never be just about you. Your
mm,
purpose will never be self-serving. And I think that's how you found purpose. That it is never self-serving. It is ultimately to bring glory to God's name. It is ultimately to win souls for the kingdom. It is ultimately to remind people of, one of the things I say in my prayers is, God, fill me up so much that when people experience me, they experience you. When they
wow.
experience me and the love that I have and the joy that radiates from me, they kind of want to know, what does she have? I
Mm,
want some of that. What is in her? I want some of that. And those are the prayers that I make, that Lord, fill me with so much of you, that when people experience me, they want to get to know you. They want to see your love. They want to
mm,
see you as a loving Father. And understand that that essentially is my purpose. It's not meant to serve me. And yes, it will heal me, which is a beautiful thing, but it's not meant for me to be pompous and glorify myself and feel like I've made it. That's why I say to you that no matter what opportunity or platform I'm given, I'm forever grateful. Whether it's a small radio or a big platform, I'm always
mm,
grateful, and I always pray for that one person. I always thank God for the one person, that God, if just one person is going to listen to what I have to say and it speaks to them and it helps them, then I'm grateful. I pray for the
mm,
one, and God blesses with the multitude. But essentially, my prayer is always, God, I hope that one person, they can listen to me and hear something and know that you love them and know that you are not done with them. Essentially, my keynote is just never give up. That's my keynote. Like, don't give up. Hold on, no matter how. You will never know whether the story changes or not, whether sunshine comes or not, if you give up.
mm,
So the other day I had an interview, I had some sort of presentation at 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. And a lot of people obviously were like, no, that's so early. Who's going to be up at that time? No, 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 no. And I'm like, the person that's meant to hear it
mm.
will be up at that time.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
person that
Mm,
is meant to hear it will be up
mm,
at that time. I don't believe God is it just works as in coincidences. I know that God is he's a designer. There's
yeah.
certain ways he plans
Yeah,
and
I
puts
think
things.
everyone knows that God works in miraculous ways. I love what you say about the person who was meant to hear that message. If God intended the message that will come from you to that person, then they will be wide awake at that time and share that message. There's so many things that are very inspiring and beautiful that you have shared with regards to purpose. And what you just said is profound, if I can put it that way. Like, your purpose is not only for you, it's for other people as well. And this reminds me of a quote. I think this was Jay Shetty who said, your passion is for you, but your purpose is for others. It's
Yeah.
related to serving and it's related to God. So what you basically saying, I can resonate at all levels with it. And I think it's kind of fulfilling to get a sense of direction of where God is leading or guiding you. All you just need to do is basically just be obedient to his guidance. I love that. So I could tell that you have found your purpose. And as I read the
Mm.
book, while we're still speaking about purpose, you mentioned and also a catchy phrase that says, finding purpose in your pain.
Mm.
Because it comes in different forms. And
Mm.
sometimes, if it's not for you, if it's related to service, especially with the kingdom of God, you must be rest assured that sometimes the journey will not be easy. It will be painful, it will be hard. And in the midst of it all, God will give you or will show you a purpose about your life. And I want to take you back to high school. And you've shared something about your journey in high school, one of them being, your weight loss journey as you were transitioning into varsity. You are friends with pretty girls in high school, and somehow you managed to develop imposter syndrome. I don't know whether it was a question of self-image or whatever. Can you elaborate on that, and how did you develop imposter syndrome in high school?
Sure. I think I didn't embrace the fact that I'm different. And I love
Mm.
that I've grown into this woman who embraces the fact that I am different. Like I can walk into a room and I don't feel intimidated by any other woman because I know that, okay, I am Mmatshepo and there is no other Mmatshepo. There are other amazing women here. I acknowledge that, but there is no other Mmatshepo. And because of that, I get to be me. I am meant to be
Mm.
me. And so I express that fully, So I think then um I was not okay with being different because I remember it was the four of us and I was the one who was, dark skinned and tall and I mean now even with my friends now I'm always the usually the taller one. Luckily my friends now are just a bit just maybe I'm shrinking, but I was taller and I was chubby and they were all like skinny-ish and light skin and I started to become so intimidated by that and I'm like, okay,
Mm.
I'm that friend, and I think that happens. I mean, yes, I'll definitely say the process of growing up, being a teenager, maybe adolescence had maybe something to do with it. But
Mm.
you do find adults who still experience that, that sort of I wouldn't even really say imposter syndrome. It's just that part about not feeling secure in who you are and not embracing the fact that you are different.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people, the world would probably change a whole lot if everyone really embraced the fact that they were different. I think the world has also taught us to be so conventional in our thinking that every time there's something a bit different to what we're used to, then, and that's why people are like, hey, okay, maybe I need to shrink myself so that
Mm.
people can maybe accept me a bit more. But like I said, I'm so grateful that I've really grown into this woman who can embrace the fact that she's different in any sense and I don't have to be like anyone else. And because of that, I can express myself fully without feeling the need like I need to prove myself to people. And I think another aspect of it was also the rejection element because remember I had been struggling with rejection issues from my dad. And
Mm.
so I felt like I needed to, you constantly feel like you need to audition for people's love so that they don't reject you. So being different then scared me that sure, because I don't look like them, that means I'm very, is it dispensable, disposable? Is it disposable? Dispensable. Okay, I'll
This-
check. But they can easily get rid of you. I need to check what that word is. But yeah, so I was just so worried that the people would easily get rid of me because I didn't look
Mm.
like them, which came from the aspect that I felt like I needed to audition for people's love and acceptance as well. So yeah, I think maybe that's where it was coming from. But
Oh,
thank
I
God
see. I think it's, that would be mean to use that term disposable to refer to
oh,
someone you are getting rid of. But disposable, it means getting rid of something, or disposing, it means getting rid of something. I see. I want us to wrap this interview. I think we've spoken at length. You are very talkative. I must repeat that part. I want us to talk about your healing journey, right? And probably you can touch on therapy as well, because it's very important knowing or actually reading from the book that we have gone through the most in life. And for you having, like you just shared now, discovered that self-acceptance is a game changer. You need to accept who you are, embrace who you are as a person, and that will change everything, your outlook on life, and you'll be more positive, you'll be more happy eventually. So with all of that, maybe you can share the changes that you experience in relation to your transformation, someone's in everything, the importance of, self-acceptance, the importance of going through therapy, especially for people who are still skeptic. Why are those things very important for someone to go through self-introspection, to go through therapy, as well as do things that will basically get them to experience life in a more fuller and richer way? What can you share? What are your thoughts on those?
So, that's a very great question. I always say if you don't think you need therapy, you need therapy. Everyone needs therapy. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
Go argue somewhere else, but I honestly believe that everyone needs therapy. I think therapy gives you an opportunity to get to mirror yourself. It gives you an opportunity to get to reflect, to get to look at. I find like sometimes, right, for me, going to therapy has been such an act of intentionality. Like it's allowed me to be intentional. I find that some months I might not even have really much to, I get there and I just, oh, this is a debrief of my month or my 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. But the fact that I wasn't intentional enough to go there, intentional about my mental health, I see, and I think this is how people should see mental health, not as a crisis resolution, but not as a crisis resolution, but as a way to be proactive. It gives you an opportunity that you can be proactive with your mental health. So therapy allows me to be like intentional. It allows me to know that, okay, I have taken the steps to, get up and go do something about my thought process. It just allows you to, question yourself as well. Because I think people think that therapy means you go there, you tell them the problem, and then they give you the answer. They don't really give you the answer. They just help you. Therapy helps you to guide your thought process.
Yeah.
It allows you to ask yourself certain questions like, why did I behave in that way? One thing we're busy working through in therapy right now is just Mmatshepo being comfortable in Mmatshepo's skin. And for as long as we've been doing that, the months that we've been doing that, it's only now that it's like actually click, what that concept, because I've always felt that I'm very comfortable in my skin. And it's only now that I'm getting to understand what that actually means. And that didn't come from the therapist telling me or this is what it means. It came from me constantly reflecting, okay, this is what happened, this was my thought process, this was the emotion that guided this thought process. And from all of that analysis or all of that, I was able to kind of get to the conclusion that, oh, when we speak being comfortable in your own skin, this is actually what Dr. Dumi meant, who's my psychologist. So yeah, therapy really helps you to guide your thought process. It's really a great part of the transformation journey. I always say transformation, as well as it is external, it is like internal as well. You need to do the internal work, go deep inside, dig deep into your dysfunctions, find your activator so you don't have to keep repeating the same pattern, so that your transformation can be long lasting. So yeah.
Yeah. So this one is basically about your mom. In your whole journey, you even regard her as your role model, inspiration. Like there's so many things. You speak fondly of her in your book. I just want to find out what are the other instrumental roles that she played in your life, especially in your journey of transformation.
So my mom has always, I think, encouraged me. She's always encouraged me to, um, let me say, my mom has taught me the principle of allowing myself as many restarts as possible. Even when I was going through the weight loss journey, I remember thinking, sure, mama, what if I fail again? And she said, it's not about how many times you fail, but it's about how many times you keep getting up and trying again. My mom always uses this analogy that when you fall down, you dust yourself off and you keep on going. You never, ever, ever give up. So this keynote that I continuously speak of never giving up or holding on, it actually comes from the words of my mom and the advice of my mom that, hey, you never give up. You allow yourself to restart. If you fall, even while you're on this transformation journey, I've still had those seasons where I've cried and I've been a mess. But each time my mom has said, you don't give up. We're going to get up. You're going to cry for a bit. Then we get up, we dust ourselves off, and we keep on going. So she's done a lot, but the one thing that really stands out is definitely that aspect of allowing me to have as many restarts as possible.
I'm glad, we had this conversation, but now I think we have come to the end of the questions that are related to the book. But before we move on with the last remaining questions, I want to find out from you if there's anything very important from the book that you would like the viewers of the podcast to know about, that you feel like is very important, that we haven't covered so far.
No, the whole book is important. Okay, get the.
Of course, it's important, but I
I'm a
mean, we
real
spoke about
author.
all things. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I even had to skip some of the questions here because there's so much richness in your book. But because of time, we're limited by time. I wanted to summarize everything that we haven't covered yet in the book that, you want the reader to definitely know that is in your book.
I think we didn't cover chapters. I think we covered most of the chapters very briefly: the holistic change, the activator, the life altering moment, chapter 3, which is hunger and thirst for more. And I think that also really does cover quite a lot. I think that's really where, as much as then it was a life altering moment that prompted me to start, my transformation journey, but I needed to have the hunger and the thirst for more. I needed to hunger and thirst for better, a better version of Mmatshepo, a better version of Tshepi. So I think that's one thing that's quite important. I mean, most of the chapters are quite important and interlinked, but that's one thing we haven't really covered. And I think it's definitely a good CSP, central selling point. Yeah. That it's so important when we're speaking transformation, because essentially, if you don't have the hunger, like, have you noticed how people, if you give a baby something that they weren't really desiring, or they weren't even hungry for, they're going to play around with it. If it's food, they're just gonna have 2 bites and then, not be so bothered with it. And I think it's the same thing. If you don't have the hunger and the thirst of a better version of you, of getting out of that dysfunction, of living a better life, then the transformation is almost impossible. So it's important to develop that hunger and thirst for more, to know that, okay, beyond this, on the other side of this dysfunction lies a Mmatshepo that is free, a Mmatshepo that is living and walking in her purpose, a Mmatshepo that is impacting others, a Mmatshepo that is a kingdom builder, a Mmatshepo that is living for the Lord, and, living and basking in all this joy and this glory, and then the benefits that come with that. So yeah, a hunger and a thirst for more is my CSP.
Now, my first question that is not related to the book, but is something that is critical for anyone who is into personal development. You mentioned earlier that the game changer, one of the book, maybe the first book that you read that was a game changer for you, is the 5 a.m. Club. I want to ask you if you have other 2 or 3 book titles. It can even be one that have made a significant impact in your life the same way as the 5 a.m. Club.
And Atomic Habits.
Nice.
I loved
Okay.
it. I loved an Atomic Habits. I loved the 12-week year,
Wow.
where it speaks about achieving change in 12 weeks. Those are good. The Relentless. I read The Relentless. I forget. I tend to not memorize the authors'
The
names, which is
author's
something
name. Okay.
I need to sound intelligent. I need to remember the authors' names. Um, and then I read the monk who sold his Ferrari. That was a
Oh.
good one. Loved it. Loved the principles that were taught in that book. So Robin Sharma is definitely an all-round great author. Amazing, amazing author. And there was one more. It keeps missing my mind. What is it? The Alchemist.
The Alchemist.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was a bit of a. You need to kind of read it, go through the pages maybe a bit more, like twice. But that one was also quite a book. But I'll definitely say, like, top 3 is Atomic Habits. Oh, and I also read 2 books by Sarah J. Shane. I forget the first one, but I read Woman Evolve. But the first one was definitely like great. I keep forgetting the name. And yeah, so Atomic Habits, 12-week year, and the one by Sarah Jakes, the first one. The monk who sold his Ferrari. And yeah, those are top 5.
Okay, that's great. I asked for 2, but you gave me 5. So that's beautiful.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's what I know when someone is a reader. I don't want to use the word bookworm. There's even more contemporary word now. It's called a bibliophile. That is someone
Oh,
who loves and appreciates books, someone who loves reading and share their knowledge, even encourage other people to start cultivating the culture of reading books. So I could
oh.
tell you are one, you're a bibliophile. Thank you, Tsepi. Oh,
Thank
another question that I have, I know you are a public speaker. That's in your bio, of course. And recently you've been giving talks on radio and giving motivational talks somewhere. I just want to find out from someone who might be preparing a talk in the future, what tip can you give them if they want to deliver a memorable and impactful public talk?
Tip number 1, read Sibongiseni's book, The Speech Checklist. That's the right title, right?
Yes, yes, correct. Thank you,
Yes,
Tepi.
read Sibo's book, The Speech Checklist. Listen, I'm grabbing those nuggets. Um, okay, but I think one thing I've been learning, so as you're going on this public speaking journey, it's so important to also hear from other public speakers what are the important things. And something that I've seen also while speaking, story. It's so beautiful when you're able to attach story, whether it's yours or someone else's story, to what you're sharing. In my case, because I'm a bit more of like a motivational speaker, it wouldn't make sense to share someone else's story. So it's so great to build up on my experiences and my story. So
Yeah.
I think one of the great tips to delivering a beautiful presentation is really sharing your story. And my mom always says that one thing with your story is that you will never forget it. Like you will
Yeah.
never forget. You know how sometimes we panic as public speakers. What if I forget this? What if I forget that? And I find for me, it's such a great warm up when I start sharing and I refer to my story. And even when I feel like I've lost my train of thought, I'm able to kind of pick myself up because I'm sharing from my story. It's not someone else's story. It's not something that I've had to memorize. It's solely Mmatshepo. So I think for me, that is like one of the really great tips, sharing from your story, because really you're speaking from the heart, and your audience, that's where you get to find an audience that relates to you and to your story and to what you have been through. So yeah.
That's true. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
Last but
you.
not least, Tsepi, I want you to take your time to think about this one
Mm-hmm.
because I just want to, pick your brain and hear in relation to your ambitions and vision in life. Let's say failure was not an option in your life. What is that one thing that you'll pursue with all your might and your power, knowing that you wouldn't fail?
Oh wow, that is tricky.
Hmm.
Um, I'll still take it back to my purpose.
Okay.
I still want to take it back to that. And that question you're asking, I think it's making me have a lot of sub questions in my mind.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think for me, let me not make it general, but for me, the thing I value most in this life is my relationship with Christ. That's the number one. Like it's that, and then everything else, And then obviously from that place, if I am meant to win souls for the kingdom and kingdom build through my purpose, then that should be something that is equally as important. And even when you discover your purpose and you know your purpose, it doesn't mean that it's smooth sailing. You're going to have a lot of no's. I mean, I'm still knocking on doors. In fact, I'm still at the entry level, still knocking on those doors, still going through the hustle and bustle and really trying to get those opportunities. And you still get those challenges and those failures, like you've mentioned. And so, if I had an opportunity to pursue that one thing without failure, it would definitely be my purpose. Getting to a place where I feel for me the most beautiful thing would be getting to heaven one day and the Lord saying, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." you know.
Yes.
I think, yeah, and I think for me that's the ultimate goal, and um, that would come from me having fully lived out my
Mm,
purpose, having fully done my work and played my part in kingdom building, in winning souls for the kingdom, in um helping other people see the Father's love. I think for me, that's something that really radiates in my heart. Like, I want people to see God's character. I think
mm,
sometimes as people, we have this image of God just being in heaven and so ready to hit us with the stick whenever we make a sin. I think that's how people are, and that's when you find that people fall into so much self-condemnation because of that mindset, not realizing that,
mm,
sure, the picture of Christianity is like that story of the prodigal son, where the father leaves his position as king, as with his position, and runs to his son, and
mm,
that's the image that we should have of our father, that he's a loving father, that he makes us as white as snow. He
mm,
cleans us from our sins, that those of us who are in him are new creatures. The old has passed away, that he doesn't condemn us. And you know, everything that covers that is God's love. And I really pray, my prayer is that when people experience me, they can get a glimpse of that.
mm,
People can want to experience that. People can kind of be inquisitive about God's love. And that is not this father who's ready to just like, but he wants to love us and he's waiting there with open arms. So yeah, for me, it would be fulfilling my purpose and my mandate. So that I can achieve the ultimate of God saying, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
mm.
Yeah.
Well done, my good and faithful
Yeah.
servant. I think I'm going to steal that one and make it my own as well. Thank you. Okay, let's wrap it up, Tsepi. For people who want to have a copy of your book, how much is
Yay.
it and where do they get hold of their copy?
So the book is 250 rands from me. So, my name is Mmatshepo Seoka, like we said. I'm on all social media platforms with Mmatshepo Seoka. You obviously see my name on the poster or the Zoom poster. You can just inbox me. My inboxes are open, and then I will communicate messages as to how you can access the book.
Okay, great. And I believe you also, let's say people want to contribute towards the great work that you are doing through your nonprofit. And do they also contact you the same way for inquiring about the book?
Yeah, so on my social media pages there's a like a hyperlink rather to the actual nonprofit. Like Instagram, I'll put the what's this? The account. The
Okay.
account of the
The handle.
nonprofit. The handle the handle of the nonprofit will be on there. But on Facebook the hyperlink will be on there. Yes.
Beautiful. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Pepi, thank you so much. And thanks to the viewers for listening to this podcast from the beginning to the end. I would like to plead with all of you to please subscribe so that you will be notified in the future when the new episode comes in. Thanks so much and have a lovely time. Bye.